Our coast was not considered by the National Energy Board.
The Federal Court of Appeal has dealt the Trans Mountain Expansion project a major blow.
I was hurt and sad, embarrassed, I guess. I don't find it safe anymore.
An Alberta community struggles to come to grips with one of their own being charged with the highway shooting of a German tourist.
That's very, very valuable information, you know, even though it's a lot of stuff will probably be personal about their communities and about their own families and what they went through.
And a Mi'kmaq Cultural Centre in Nova Scotia receives a collection of interviews and artifacts from elders.
Good evening. Welcome to APTN National News. I'm Dennis Ward.
And I'm Melissa Ridgen. It's a major blow to the Trudeau government. The Federal Court of Appeal ruled today that Canada had not fulfilled its duty to consult with First Nations on the Trans Mountain Pipeline expansion from Alberta to British Columbia.
The court concluded that the federal government failed in its duty to engage in meaningful consultations with First Nations before giving the green light to the project. Following today's court decision, First Nations and environmentalists are celebrating the ruling. APTN's Tina House has the story.
It's a celebration for First Nations who fought a long, hard battle to stop the Trans Mountain Pipeline, from the land to the water and now to Canada's highest court.
Today, we won in court against this project.
Eugene Kung is one of the lawyers who represented the Tsleil-Waututh Nation, one of the nations who opposed the project.
This is a decision that combined at one point 16 different appeals. At the end of the day, it was 14. And those were the appeals to the National Energy Board process and recommendation, as well as the federal government's decision.
In the federal court's decision today, they described consultation with First Nations as short of the mark. They also said that there is a critical error made in basing their decision on the National Energy Board's illegal decision to exclude marine shipping from its review. Grand Chief Stuart Phillip has been adamantly opposed to the project since the very beginning.
I was, really taken aback by the decision. The extent of the decision, upholding all of our arguments, our legal arguments, our political statements over the last number of years, and I just couldn't believe it. What you see on my face is my smile. I'm not known for my smile, but this is it.
And just a half hour after the ruling, Kinder Morgan shareholders voted with a 99% certainty to continue to sell the Trans Mountain Pipeline to the federal government of Canada.
Now they have a lame duck expansion, a lemon as some called it, except Canada also made the lemon. They also grew the lemon that they then bought. So in terms of the sale, it's an even worse deal now for Canada.
Elder Amy George is the daughter of the late Chief Dan George. She has been fighting against the pipeline for 10 years and was even arrested up on Burnaby Mountain. She's also walked near the tar sands.
On the walk, I saw one bird and it was dead on the ground. I've seen pictures of them pulling a big black bear out of the trailing ponds, and that's where it started. The first time I ever talked, they said, sometime in your life, it's time for you to put down your remote control and your Game Boys and warrior up, I told my people.
The federal government announced that they are determined to see this project through despite the court ruling. Tina House, APTN National News, Vancouver.
The Trudeau government has not made a decision on whether to appeal today's ruling by the Federal Court of Appeal. Federal Finance Minister Bill Morneau says Ottawa will push ahead with the Trans Mountain Pipeline expansion, but the political fight the feds have been facing over the project is also not going away. Liberal Finance Minister Bill Morneau says the government needs to analyze the ruling by the Federal Court of Appeal before deciding on an appeal of its own. But he contends the Trans Mountain Pipeline expansion is a sound investment and in the national interest.
Our government remains committed to ensuring that the project proceeds in a manner that protects the public interest. That means ensuring the highest level of governance, including environmental protection. It means upholding our commitments with Indigenous peoples. And it means responsibly protecting Canada and Canadians' investment.
99% of Kinder Morgan shareholders voted in favor on Thursday of selling the Trans Mountain Pipeline expansion and assets to the federal government. The $4.5 billion deal is expected to close as early as Friday. Conservative leader Andrew Scheer says the Trudeau government bungled the pipeline project. Scheer says the news is a gut punch to energy workers across Canada and for taxpayers. He says Trudeau cancelled Northern Gateway and killed Energy East. Scheer says his party would have gotten the consultation with First Nations right.
I'm quite confident that the Conservative Party would have, Conservative government, as we had in the past, as we saw 4 major pipelines built during the Conservative government, we would have continued to do meaningful consultation in a comprehensive way, leading to an approval. That I have no doubt on.
Opponents of the project say the court ruling confirms what many First Nations and others have been saying all along. There was not adequate consultation.
The consultation process isn't just a checklist. It's in the decision, it was clear that the concern was that there wasn't a dialogue. There was concerns raised by First Nations communities. There was concerns raised by coastal communities. And those concerns were not addressed. Those concerns are largely that there's going to be a massive impact to the environment, to their lands, to the marine diversity. And those concerns are legitimate. There is an environmental concern that was not addressed, but the First Nations communities' concerns, there's got to be a dialogue back and forth. And they're saying, listen, this is not acceptable to us. There's serious concerns with this project.
BC Premier John Horgan wasn't willing to say "I told you so," but had a big grin on during a press conference with reporters.
I'm not unlike many British Columbians who have held the view that our coast was not considered by the National Energy Board, and I feel that those citizens have been vindicated today.
As we've told you, the Federal Court of Appeal has ruled against the Trans Mountain Pipeline expansion project. That leaves this project in limbo, at least for now. With more on that, we're joined by Lucy Sholey in our Ottawa Bureau. So, Lucy, how did the court come to this decision?
Well, there are 2 main reasons behind the decision. One is that the court ruled that the National Energy Board process was so flawed that it never should have formed the basis for the decision to greenlight the Trans Mountain project. One critical error, according to the court ruling, was that the process failed to consider the full environmental impacts, namely the impact of tanker traffic on the southern resident killer whale population. The other reason is that the government, according to the court ruling, failed to meaningfully consult with Indigenous peoples on the project. So although government representatives may have held these consultations with Indigenous groups, with First Nations, and although they might have recorded what some of these Indigenous people may have said, their criticisms, their concerns, that there was never really any real meaningful back and forth between the government and First Nations on the project, and this is something that some First Nations have been saying from the get-go.
Yeah, this isn't the first court ruling to tisk Ottawa for not properly consulting with First Nations. So what's the reaction to today's decision? What have you been hearing?
Well, this is being hailed as a huge victory for Indigenous groups and those activists that have opposed the project. For the Liberal government, however, it's a huge setback. But today, Finance Minister Bill Morneau gave no indication that the government was going to back down from the project. He didn't go so far as to say that they were going to take this to the Supreme Court, but he did reiterate that it's in the national interest and that it's a sound investment. So today's decision does not mean in any circumstances that the project is dead.
So what options does the federal government have now then, I guess, to get the pipeline built after this decision?
Well, like I said, there still is the option to take it to the Supreme Court, which could take many months. If the government does choose to follow the court ruling, what the court has ordered was for the government to fix the critical error, which is the impact on the southern whale population, or to consider what the impact on the southern killer whale population might be, and to also redo the consultation process with Indigenous people. It's still unclear how long all this could take should the government try to move ahead on the pipeline, but in the meantime, the government has been ordered to halt all construction on the Trans Mountain pipeline.
Well, I guess that's where we're at for now, and there will be many more developments in this story. I'm sure it's an expensive project and lots of interests in it. Thanks so much, Lucy, for joining me.
Thank you.
RCMP are investigating the death of a toddler in a northern Manitoba community.
And people in the Northwest Territories wanting to help with a nationwide blood shortage have no place to donate. Those stories and more are coming up, but first here's a look at tomorrow's weather forecast. We've got 20 and sunny in Charlottetown, 23 and sunny in Halifax. La Grande River is 13 with some sunshine. Kuujjuaq 10 and sunny. 21 in Chibougamau, Saguenay 18 in sunshine. Settee 19 in sunshine. 20 in Sarnia, 23 in Windsor, London 23. Lots of sun in southern Ontario. Lots of sun in northern Ontario. 20 in Kapuskasing, 18 in Timmins, 8 in Churchill with some cloud and rain. God's Lake 18. Norway House 18 as well. 24 and it's cloud in Gimli, 24 and cloud in Winnipeg. Saskatoon is sunny and 20, Estevan 23 and lots of sunshine. Uranium City cloudy and 15, Stony Rapids sunshine and 18, Meadow Lake and Buffalo Narrows 16 and some cloud.
Welcome back. RCMP say the death of a toddler in a remote fly-in community in northern Manitoba is being investigated as a homicide. Mounties say the Little Grand Rapids Detachment received a report of an unresponsive 3-year-old boy on August 23rd. He had been brought from his home to the community nursing station and was later pronounced dead. The RCMP's Major Crime and Forensic Identification Unit went to the community about 280 kilometers northeast of Winnipeg to investigate.
To developing news we're following out of Manitoba, we have more details about the shooting of an RCMP officer last night. Police say several officers were responding to a break and enter in Onanol, north of Brandon, when they were fired upon. One 42-year-old male officer was struck. Early this morning, police were able to apprehend 3 suspects, and a 4th was caught this afternoon after an hours-long standoff with police. More details will be released when charges have been laid.
To Alberta now, where a recent shooting near Stoney Nakoda First Nation left a German tourist with a serious brain injury. A youth from the community has been charged in connection with the incident. Now, some Stoney Nakoda residents fear the event will portray a negative image of their community. APTN's Tamara Pimentel has this report.
The whole community is in shock right now.
People of the Stoney Nakoda First Nation are coping with the news, which they say casts a dark shadow on their community.
I was hurt and sad, embarrassed, I guess. I don't find it safe anymore.
In early August, a tourist from Germany was driving down this road near the reserve with his family when a shot was fired from a passing vehicle. The bullet hit his head, leaving him with a serious brain injury. Now, a 16-year-old from the First Nation is facing 14 charges, including attempted murder. The tourist survived the incident and is back in Germany, but can't speak or move his right side.
It's a tragedy for the victim. It's a man whose life has been irreversibly changed and the healing journey that lies ahead for him. But I'm also very saddened for the life of that young man that's being charged.
The Stoney Nation is just east of the popular Banff National Park, so tourists pass by all the time. Thomas Snow, resident of the reserve, says he fears the incident will shine a negative light on the community and damage its relationship with non-Indigenous people.
I want them to see the healing power of this land, not an isolated incident that was an act of violence.
Police say the investigation is still ongoing and the case has been adjourned to September 4th. Tamara Pimentel, APTN National News on the Stoney Nakoda First Nation.
This month, Canada Blood Services announced a national shortage. But what happens with regions that cannot donate? Our reporter Charlotte Morit-Jacobs lives in one of those areas and brings you this story.
This is something Rebecca Jumbo relies on. She's had 4 blood transfusions since November as she awaits an organ transplant.
For me, it was kind of scary. I was like, wow. Because getting transfusions, like, you never think it would happen to you type thing. And then sometimes you'll hear about these scary stories or experiences other people had and reactions and whatnot.
All of the blood Jumbo receives is flown in from Edmonton and not from the territories where she lives, as there is no donation center. At first glance, this could worry some. At any given time, there is only 20 units of blood in this fridge. According to Manager of Laboratory Services, Jennifer Daly-Bernier, that's all they need.
On a daily basis what our inventory is and what our utilization is. But again, it doesn't impact our ability to achieve our minimum inventory levels. It certainly has never resulted, in my experience, in not being able to get the products that we need, and as far as we're concerned. And again, that is very fortunate for us.
She explains that for the modest numbers of eligible donors in the NWT, there is no need to stretch resources for a center.
For the 20 units in my refrigerator, I'm not really sure that it would be the wisest use of a registered nurse to bleed 20 people when we have, wait times in the emergency.
Daly-Bernier says less invasive surgeries have also played a role in the need for less blood.
We're really learning that conditions which we may have been more likely to transfuse, say 20 or 30 years ago, really patients are capable of recovering on their own. And patients are also...
While the desire to donate blood might run through the veins of Yellowknifers, the lack of donations won't impact Jumbo, something she is happy about.
I feel pretty confident because the last time I had a transfusion and stuff, they were pretty quick, and last I heard through my nurses is that they're pretty well organized, pretty stocked and whatnot. And
Canada Blood Services says while the urgent need for blood before Labor Day has been met, they still are 7,000 donations short for mid-September. If you can donate south of 60. Charlotte Mort-Jacobs, APTN National News, Yellowknife.
We want to hear what you think. Here's how to continue the conversation. You can send your emails to news@aptn.ca. You can find us online at aptnnews.ca and on youtube.com/aptnnews. You can also follow APTN News on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram for more Indigenous news.
For the first time, the City of Montreal hosted a summit between Quebec mayors and First Nation chiefs. More than 100 leaders from all across Quebec participated in this historic event. They want to establish an ongoing dialogue regarding reconciliation between nations. The parties agreed to sign on to this future commitment. For Quebec Regional Chief Ghislaine Picard says it means new opportunities.
Definitely, I think what we witnessed this morning is really the reality as communities and municipalities live it, day by day. In certain regions, people were able to speak about success. In other regions, it wasn't so much so. And this is something that we cannot, first of all, not deny.
The next summit between Quebec First Nations chiefs and mayors will be held in Wendake within a year. Time for another quick break and then a story about a Mi'kmaq elders donation to a local cultural center.
But first, here's the rest of your weather tomorrow. $15 in Cloud and Peace River, 16 in Sunshine and Grand Prairie. Edmonton's in at 18 sunshine, 21 in Calgary, sunshine, 23 and sun in Medicine Hat. Campbell River, 22 with a mix of sun and clouds. Kamloops, mainly sunny with 26, Penticton 24 and sunshine. Dease Lake, 13 in cloud. Fort Nelson, 15 and some cloud and rain. Prince George, 16 in cloud. Beaver Creek, 8 and cloud. Whitehorse, 12, cloudy, 15 in Watson Lake. Norman Wells is in at 6, Wattie 13, Yellowknife 14, Fort McPherson 5 and rain, Colville Lake 4 and rain, Cambridge Bay 6 and some rain, 12 in Baker Lake, 11 in Whale Cove and sunshine in those places. Arctic Bay 6 as well as Clyde River 6, sunshine in both places. Cape Dorset 4 and Iqaluit 7. Welcome back. A Mi'kmaq Cultural Centre in Nova Scotia has just received a new collection. An elder's donation has something different that has set the Mi'kmaq community talking. Angel Moore brings us a preview.
Lillian Marshall dedicated her life to protecting Mi'kmaq history and language by recording the voices and teachings of her elders.
Her room upstairs would just be filled with tapes and cassettes and written transcripts of the interviews.
Marshall's legacy of preserving the Mi'kmaq language will continue on even after her death. She donated her collection to be shared for generations to come. Don Julian worked with Marshall for decades collecting Mi'kmaq history.
The White Paper Policy of 1969 sort of woke up the nation. All the First Nations people in Canada were against what Trudeau was trying to do.
Julian said people were afraid their culture would be lost. So Marshall took action. She went to several Mi'kmaq communities to interview elders and record their stories.
That's very, very valuable information, you know, even though it's a lot of stuff will probably be personal about their communities and about their own families and what they went through.
The tape recordings are a time capsule of oral traditions that Marshall was excited to share.
She would always tell me, oh, you got to come over. You got to come over to us. There's an interview here I want you to listen to. It's your great-great-grandmother. And she says, I have it here. And
Marshall's knowledge will now be passed on by those who loved her.
Lillian, you know, I dearly miss her. And every time we had an elders meeting, we'd be sitting in the corner, just in that corner over there, talking in Mi'kmaq and laughing about things.
And to just be honest and true to yourself. And she just had so much love for so many people. And I'll really miss that. Yeah.
The tapes will be transcribed and analyzed and available to the public in a few years at the Mi'kmaq Debert Cultural Centre. Angel Moore, APTN National News, Halifax.
That is a pretty great idea.
Yeah.
And that is all the news we have for you tonight, but we leave you with a video of Melanie Bobby, Granny Melanie to loved ones, fishing for salmon along the Chilcotin River in the Alexis Creek area in BC.
Her daughter, Alana Bobby, shared the video earlier this week, stating that if her 77-year-old mom can catch salmon, so can you. She makes it look easy, though. I'm Melissa Ridgen.
And I'm Dennis Ward. Have a great night.
Ha ha ha!